So Catalyze SV is a non-profit with a
Try to get the echo out.
I think this. Hello. Better? Yeah. Catalyze SV is a non-profit with a vision of creating equitable spaces and places for all. I am sure that most of you are aware of Catalyze SV. So, this is some of the housekeeping items. If you need any special accommodations, which I think many of us need today, because of the room size. But sorry about it. We tried the best. Bathrooms are at the back. We are recording this, and we may not be recording the small groups, which we will be having later. Water and drinks are in the front. There will be light dinner served at 4:30. And there will be post-event survey, please complete it. Reminders, everybody's inputs matters. We treat everybody with respect, everybody participate, and let's stay on track on time. So, Catalyze is one of the core values is community engagement. And today, it's the call to provide a space where we can have a conversation around the topic, which is very close to my heart, seniors, design for seniors. Our presenting sponsors kind of community on the and use the community services. Thank you all the sponsors for making this happen. Today's agenda, so we are almost done with the registration. Next will be a featured talk by Weden. And after that, we will have a small group discussion. We will divide everybody into groups of 6 to 8 and have some prompts where you can collaborate, talk about, and then every group will present in 2 minutes something based on that. After that, we will have a fireside chat with the architects and developers. And after that, we have vision making and food break. And the last will be another roundtable fireside chat with the senior service providers. And at the end, Q&A. I'm just curious, how many in this room are above 55? That's good.
I'm sorry, what's that?
How many in the room are above 55? Now you're in our So, I am thinking about my retired senior life. So I think if you're in the right place today, the next is Don Weden. You to read Don's aloud. My pleasure to introduce Don Weden. Don was a regional planner at Santa Clara County. During his 34 years with Santa Clara County Planning, he managed a wide array of planning studies, including the last comprehensive revision of County's general plan. Since his retirement, he is community advisor and educator. Some of his great presentations have been on topics of cities of all ages, intelligent urbanism, and urbanism. So today you're going to get a glimpse of one of his presentations. And let's welcome Don. Now I'm going to stop sharing.
I leave the session. Instead of sharing.
Everybody on Zoom can hear us, right? Just check.
It's happening. What are we showing that?
You have to go back.
And let's get back to the slides here. Oh, we're doing now. There we go. Technology is in the brand. It works. It works. Well, thank you, Shelley. Alex in the back, and outside actually. And any other of you volunteer?
I would acknowledge. And,
Oh,
I think that,
yeah, sure.
I would like to introduce, I guess, everybody knows that, that they're by the speaking. Jake Torino, Deputy Manager, Jake Retd, Development Project. What is Manager of Development Products, right? I have a figure. Rachel,
Keep speaking in mic.
and Rachel, she has been a great help. I don't know. Thank you.
All right. Just wanted to certainly everyone got the due proper respect here for the work they put into this. Thank you all for doing that. And thank you for putting on this event about what I think is one of the most important issues facing Santa Clara County, which is the aging of the population. Not just the aging of our population, but how that interacts with the way we plan our cities and the programs we provide for our older adults. So I'm going to be providing some context for today's discussion. I want to begin by giving you a number, and an important number that I hope you all remember. The number is 400,000. To keep that number in mind, 400,000. In fact, just so we all remember, let's say it once together. I'll count through and we'll say 400,000, right? Yeah, it's participatory. It's mandatory. No hanging back. All right. 1, 2, 3, 400,000. All right, that sounds great. Yeah. 400,000 is the number of older adults we have in Santa Clara County who are over age 65. 400,000. To put that into some context, then if they were all in one city, it would be our second largest city. It would be behind only San Jose. Another way of looking at it is more than the populations of Sunnyvale, Santa Clara, and Mountain View combined. And those are our second, third, and fourth largest cities in Santa Clara County. So it's a big deal. It's something we really ought to be paying more attention to. Partly we don't because it's so scattered out, it's dispersed. We're not all in one city, so we can't see the magnitude of it. That's what that number 400,000. Keep it in mind. It's going to come back later. There'll be a quiz midway through here. You better remember that. That's the secret. All right, so we'll just check one more thing here. Oops. Okay, so where am I going from here? I'm trying to get my slides to go. Here we go. Where am I going from here? Well, here's an outline of my presentation, which we begin by talking about the importance of context. We're talking about design today, but design requires a context, so that's what I'm going to talk about first. Then I'm going to talk about the silver tsunami having arrived. I'll explain what that means in a few moments. Maybe you're aware of that term. Thirdly, so what? What difference does it make that our population is aging? Fourth, present sort of outline a framework for a toolkit for thinking about what we can do to meet the needs of an aging population. Talk about intelligent determinism. It seems like that our population is getting older. The suburban model that was guiding our growth and development for the last 70 years is run out of gas and no longer provides solutions to the problems and challenges we face. I'm suggesting intelligent urbanism needs to be the replacement for that. And how that relates to the aging population, and then I'll have some really comments. So that's where I'm going for the next 15 minutes. All right. One second. Bringing it sitting in the middle of my screen. It's keeping me from seeing the words. Yeah, I just wanted to just thing here a little bit. Oh, okay. Give it back. There it is. All right. So, we've got a problem with this. It's how it sounds. It's a great day. It's covering up the title slides. Or we can make that one go away. That would be no. That's like this. Yeah, sure. There we go. All right. Sorry about that, folks. I've spoken in this room a number of times. The first time we had it via Zoom, so it was a technical glitch. Anyway, backing up, so that's the outline. Let's begin talking about the importance of context. When we're talking about design, design requires a context. It doesn't occur in a vacuum. Whether we're planning physical things like buildings or we're planning programs, they don't occur in a vacuum. You can get what is the context in which they exist. So you can come up with great ideas that will work wonderful in Akron, Ohio, but just won't apply, or vice versa. So, we need to consider the context as we plan, as we design things. That includes the geographic context, temporal context, what time is it now, what we in the history of the community, social context, economic context, environmental, technological, et cetera, et cetera. So design requires a context. We need people, what's going on in this world around us, that would either help or hinder us in implementing the design solutions that we come up with. For example, if we're actually designing a pair of shoes, would matter whether we're planning for them to be used in the tropics or the Arctic. Make it simple. And it also applies to whether we're designing physical structures, like senior centers or what have you, or designing programs to operate within those senior centers. You need to understand the context in order to come up with an effective solution. Some will be talking about the current context of our economy. Two things in particular: the aging of our population, and the suburban model has run out of gas in terms of guiding us into the future. Works fine in the past. I'm not complaining about the suburbs saying going forward, it really doesn't answer the challenges that we're facing. So the silver tsunami, I think you've heard that term before. Is that new? Yeah, okay. Well, it's a metaphor that came about back in the 1980s. What it referred to was the social and economic impacts that people were anticipating would happen once the baby boomers started reaching retirement age, which actually started occurring back in 2011. So basically, this is what they were thinking about. What happens when the baby boomers get to a certain age? And, exactly swamped Social Security, things of that sort. Baby boomers were the folks who were born between 1946 and 1964. This sort of bump in after the war when a lot of soldiers were coming back from the war and the families were trying to get created. That's when we had the baby boom generation. It's a term that the silver tsunami is sort of as a metaphor has been used in popular media and professional journals for a number of decades. Sometimes it's used playfully, sometimes ominously. I'm using too sharp. But the point is, the long anticipated silver tsunami has arrived. It's not something that's going to arrive. It started back in 2011 when the boomers started reaching. So we are actually well into this. The wave is upon us. It's not out there waiting to come ashore. It is upon us. You need to keep that in mind. Because by 2030, all the boomers are going to be over 65. They once may have looked like this in their childhood. They're looking more like this today. Well, so what? What difference does that make? Well, several things. First of all, we now have the oldest population in our country's history. And it's projected to get even older over the decades ahead. So this is not a temporary phenomenon. It's something we'll be dealing with for the next 20, 30 years at least. And in terms of aging, it's measured by, in some cases, what percentage of the total population are people over 65, or more specifically, in some cases, what percentage of the adult population is over 65. Both of those matter in different ways. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. So why does that matter? Well, it matters first of all because the aging of our population is going to affect everyone of any age, any geographic location in this county has been impacted one way or another by the aging of our population, and they already may be impacted by it. And secondly, it's going to impact everything. Every issue that we care about, every aspect of our social, economic, and environmental life is going to be impacted. We could probably spend the next hour or two just listing all the ways that an aging population will impact everything, including all this long list here. So we also need to recognize that the challenges caused senior tsunami, silver tsunami, is a challenge to solve that the people who will be experiencing it, the older adults, are going to be expecting more help in one way or another, or need different services, or more of some services they didn't need in the past. And at the same time, it's a challenge for the local community as to how they organize their activities, how they plan their programs, how they spend their money. We need to address both of these. We need to think about both. So that's what we need for seniors. We also need to recognize the age of our population has impacts on our local governments as well. So, but another thing that's important is this is not about the baby boom generation. It's not just when they're gone, we'll be acting normal again. Right behind the baby boom generation is Generation X. And guess what? That the day after the last baby boomer turns 65, the first Gen X turns 65. And you can see that the Gen Xers are currently from age 44 through 59. They're not making producing a lot more babies, so they are adding more to our older population as they age, not adding young kids along with them. So that's what's fueling the fire, so to speak. But that's what's continuing to trend toward the older population. Looking at the numbers, how we were and how we are today, and how it's projected. Back in 1965, excuse me, 1950 rather, only 9% of our population was over 65. That's about the time the baby boom generation was being created. We didn't have a lot of old people in the population. By 2020, that was up to 16%, and it's projected to be up to 22 by 2030. Anyway, looking at that, 1 out of 5 people in our county will be over 65 by 2030. In fact, partially the numbers we probably are in the middle of that already, getting pretty close to that. So, and that's something that I don't see a lot of attention to. We need to call attention to that. Secondly, looking at the adult population, just those who are 18 or older. Back in 2050, 1950, excuse me, 12% of our population, our adult population, was over 65. 20%, 2020, 21% is, and by 2030, it's projected that 27% of our adult population will be over 65 years of age. So 1/4 of our adult population is going to be over 65. It has enormous implications for a whole bunch of things. Another way of looking at the changes that are occurring is in this chart here is based on projections from the California Department of Finance, the state agency that's responsible for doing statewide population forecasts and so on. What they've shown for this decade, from 2020 to 2030, their projections show that we will, by the end of this decade, we will have lost, if you will, about 85,000 fewer young people in this county in 2030 than we had in 2020. 54,000 fewer adults under 65 and 18 to 65, 55,000 fewer of them, and 115,000 more seniors over 65. That is the sort of trend that is moving our future forward and making it more important than ever that we pay attention to the aging of our population, what we can do about it more positively, and deal with the challenges that it raises as well. Now, these numbers, if you add them up, they roughly come out the fact that they are projecting that we will actually lose 25,000 people in South Clark County during this decade. Maybe not. I'm skeptical of that in some respects. And the big wild card for the time we get today is the housing element updates that all of the cities started doing the last couple of years. That has opened the door for Pittsburgh. I think in Santa Clara County, we were signing 150,000 housing units to allow over the next 7 years. That in itself is kind of mind-boggling. It's not going to happen because the economy, but the door is open. The obstacles to having that housing built run away. Maybe it's a sort of a thing of the past almost because the Byzantine procedures we had for approving project, the housing project, it would take away through the housing update process. So anyway, this is a wild card in all of this. But even if we build a lot of houses, it's not going to change the fundamental demographic in their age, they older people. By 2030 in Santa Clara County, we will have more seniors than children. By 2030, more babies, fewer babies. And that's probably true regardless of what happens in terms of the housing updates. It's the way things are going. So that's why I said the order is the new normal. That's what we need to accept. It's currently the new normal and will continue to be the new normal for decades to come. Older is the new normal. We'll have a larger percentage of our population in the senior years than we've ever had in our county's history, and that percentage is going up. So we need to spread the word in a variety of different ways. Whatever you can think of, without getting the word out. We're not really saying it as we should be, and I don't realize like in the newspaper. So, and it's not just about telling people we need to take action. We have to do things. That's what we're doing in the breakout sessions here today. Thinking about what could we be doing to adapt to new opportunities and challenges that the aging population presents us with. So here's sort of the conceptual model of the different tools we have to deal with the aging population. And particularly in terms of how to address their well-being. Begin by recognizing that not all seniors are the same. Individual, we can be varying our physical and mental capabilities, our natural resources, our age, our location, our social networks, family and social networks, and have to have different capacities to draw on it to help meet our needs. Different services that are provided by public agencies or private businesses or nonprofit organizations. Those are another part of the overall model. Monetary policy things are entitlements like Social Security and Medicare. That's one example. Prop 13 is the tax policy, excuse me, and discounts such as the senior discount at local restaurants. Things of that sort. That's another element of the toolkit here. Technology, both health, communications, and mobility. Health in terms of the ability to monitor conditions of a person from their home without having to go to a doctor's appointment and get a centralized location. All sorts of devices to help make that happen. So we can monitor conditions without having to travel back and forth to actually do it. Communication, things as simple as Zoom, like we're doing today. So we people, older folks, to stay in touch with other people, families and relatives across the street, across the country, across the globe in many cases. And finally, and communications, but also mobility, things such as Uber and Lyft and other sorts of ride sharing services. They aren't necessarily affordable to everybody, but they certainly are part of the tool. And then finally, land use. How we plan our, well, from a regional level, how we built our cities, down to the neighborhoods, down to the projects, and down to individual units within those projects, all of that. So these collectively, as I see, are sort of the overall model of the tools we can use to address an aging population. Now, oh my God, it's a nice, neat model. The reality is they are not all interrelated. There's something maybe pushing in opposite directions. But the critical thing is that
Nothing.
so nothing happened. But they do impact one another. We need to keep that in mind. But of all of those, the one that I think gets the least attention is land use, how we plan our cities, because that impacts everything. It impacts how far is away. You have to drive to the grocery store, you have to walk to the grocery store, you have to drive to the doctor's office miles away, you can have a doctor's office. All it's coming back to land use. So that's where we're going to be talking next, but what I call intelligent urbanism. Now, if you go back to the 1950s, some of you don't remember that because you were here then. Back when Ike was president, all this was still alive. I think he still is. Marilyn Monroe was a box star. That's when we started building suburbs after World War II, the 50s. And that has been our template for the last 70 years. How we accommodate the growth and development in our cities is through the suburban model. By that, I mean it's lower density, automobile dependence, separated land use, a whole bunch of things. And in my longer version of this presentation, I point out that was a real blessing for our country. We are where we are today because we built this stuff. It's all the number of challenges we had in coming out of World War II. So this is not a diatribe against suburbs at all. It's just recognizing they met our needs at one time. Those conditions don't exist anymore. What is the model before? We're at a transition point between being suburban and being urban. Not entirely urban. We're not going to replace all the suburbs with the high density development that's in Steelers here. But we are changing. We're in a new era of our growth and development. And so we're becoming what I refer to as urban suburban hybrid. So we start thinking we're no longer just suburban communities, we are now urban suburban hybrid. And we can adjust our thinking and our planning to recognize that. Or Santa Clara County 3.0 in software terms. And for my perspective, Santa Clara County 1.0 was the pre-suburban era, basically from 1950 back to the Ohlone, suburban from 1950 or so up to around 2010. And the urban suburban era, Santa Clara County 3.0 is what we are in now, probably beginning from 2010 forward. So, and I want to emphasize, I'm not suggesting that suburbs are going away. Not true, not sure, but so I'm misquoted on that. But they're being supplemented by higher density development, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. That's the reality. And that is the future. Economics and other things that's the only option for us. So we need to get thinking about ourselves as a hybrid community. We want to have the best suburban neighborhoods as well as the best urban neighborhoods. Plan for both, not just let it either or expand as a both AI situation. Because the suburban model that has served us well for the last 70 years, or most of the last 70 years, has run out of gas, as I've heard. It no longer provides solutions to the challenges we're facing. It was based on conditions that existed back in the 1950s, smaller population, younger population, larger households, cheap vacant land, so on and so forth. Things have changed since then. Virtually none of those conditions exist anymore. So you can't keep using a single model and using it. It goes back to design, it goes back to context. The context has changed, the model needs to be different to adapt to those changes. So we need a new model to guide our future growth and development, one that's based on current and future conditions, not as things were in the 1950s. The new model, among other things, needs to address multiple challenges at once. It needs to address the aging of our population, certainly climate change, transportation issues, housing affordability, all of this at the same time, not just single purpose solutions where we solve one problem will make others worse. Another way for me is that we need to find a way to model let's do one thing that helps improve 3 or 4 of your problems simultaneously. Do one thing has multiple benefits. More bang for the buck or whatever metaphor you want to use there. And I'm suggesting intelligent urbanism needs to be that new model. What it involves is focusing on creating great urban neighborhoods in appropriate locations within our existing cities. Two alternative models here. One is we focus our growth into a limited number of urban neighborhoods versus just scattered density. Where it's here, there, and everywhere. Intelligent urbanism is the one on the left, where we actually focus on creating complete urban neighborhoods that are well planned, appropriately located, higher density, mixed use, complete, livable, vibrant, pedestrian, convenient, diverse, equitable, sustainable. So if you keep adding to that, but basically, sort of things that the cities often aren't these days. Independent cities are not. Places where you live independently and acting lives, reaching everything either by walking or taking transit or riding a bike, what have you. But complete urban neighborhoods is the key there, not just it's okay, we got a 7-Eleven down the street and it's a shopping opportunity. Places that aren't dependent on the automobile, that's a key element of an aging population. We're gonna have more people that can't drive, can't afford to own a car or drive because of the price of gas, what have you. We need to create neighborhoods that meet those needs. So last thing here before I get to the final section is about the relationship between intelligent urbanism and our aging population. You look at older adults, probably anywhere around the world, there's at least one set of universal goals. It's not the only one, but this is very important. Most of us as older adults want to remain active, independent, and engaged with our family, our friends, and community. And those things are all dependent to a large extent on mobility, our ability to get and see them. Yes, you can see them by Zoom, but it's not to say it's kind of hard to on your computer when you see your grandkids on Zoom. Well, the suburban model is based around cars and driving. The fundamental assumption back then was you'd all be on the drive for false assumption, unfortunately. One study called Aging Americans added that option. It's concluded that many seniors cannot drive or choose not to drive. In fact, the figure they came up, 1 out of 5 Americans over age 65 does not drive. And then more cut back, restrict their driving when gas prices go up or answer price. Sounds like California and Silicon Valley and the last of America, that's going up in gas prices. So in our case, we may even have a higher percentage, I guess, what we're suggesting here, what that is. As a result, we have many adults like this who have lived in this neighborhood for much of their life, raised their family there with their husbands and so on. Husband's gone, the kids are all scattered around the country and so on. She recently became unable to drive. And she's now trapped in the sun, trapped at home. Nearest grocery store a mile away, place of worship is a mile away. All the other things she might need, the community center, the senior center is a mile away. She can't get to them. They're great if they're there, but she no longer has the capacity to get them. Trapped in the suburbs. Let's quantify that here for a moment. All right, Santa Clara County's population is right now it's around 2 million people altogether. 25% of them are over age 65. So class, how many people is that? Excellent. Excellent. Right. Congratulations, you're paying attention. If you're masculine, it's never happened in my mind. And if 20% of those over 65 are non-drivers, that means we have about 80,000 non-drivers in Santa Clara. That's just in the over 65 age. That's roughly the city of Mountain Beach population. But that doesn't include non-driving seniors. That does not include adults under 65 who aren't drivers. For any number of reasons, vision, health, what have you, other disabilities, or seniors who probably shouldn't be driving or have no choice. I know a couple of them myself, good friends with that. So part of the consequence of that, being trapped at home in the suburbs, you get less physical exercise, social isolation, which has health and mental physical impacts. Physical exercise, and as you all know, the social contact affects our health, our ability to see other people again, move our bodies around, and so on. Another study found that non-driving seniors who go for a walk on any given day in higher density neighborhoods, 1 out of 3, or 33% of non-driving adults go for a walk on a given day in an urban neighborhood. But in a lower density urban neighborhood, it drops to 1 out of 17. Only 6%. So where people live impacts how much exercise they have, how much social interaction they have. This to me, when I first saw these statistics moving away, the way, go back to my point, the way we plan our neighborhoods and our cities has great impacts on the aging population. And they don't go up, the important is they aren't, being a non-driver doesn't mean be like we want. But walking sometimes needs a little motivation. We need to have someplace worthwhile, someplace interesting to go to walk to. Be a farmer's market, be a grocery store, be a library, what have you, be a coffee shop, which are more likely to be found in urban neighborhoods. And that's why I'm sort of looking for creating urban neighborhoods with an aging population that mixes well together. So recap of what I've done so far, talked about the importance of context, so tsunami, so what? Fuel kids meeting seniors, urbanism, and all that's left is the final from the economists. All right, which are as follows. Aging our population creates challenges, certainly it also creates opportunities. So you look at it both ways. Isn't this story negative? We have to try to perhaps we're going to deal with the seniors. No, we can there's an opportunity in many ways to make our community better and more retired people with energy and time on their hands. But I think as a community, we're inadequately prepared for the senior tsunami. In fact, it's already upon us, and most people don't realize that yet, but it's here, partly again because it's dispersed and we don't see it all the time. We need to make it a priority. We need to plan for cities for all ages, which means going back to the silent generation before the boomers and generation alpha, which is currently now. We're about to start out with generation beta in here, so we're moving along. But one of the important things to recognize is that the well-being of older adults depends on the well-being of younger adults. It's not just about what can be for seniors, but in any case, for example, with healthcare, a lot more of those people deal with the needs of an aging population. But we have a great shortage of them already, and it's getting worse in recent years because we have priced those younger adults out of the market and can't afford to live here. So housing affordability is a critical component of meeting our worker shortage and our well-being adults. We don't make housing more affordable. It doesn't matter what one nice home the seniors are living in. If they don't have it, they have to wait 6 months or appointment to the doctor's office to get the person. They can't get in home care. And of course, of creating these great urban neighborhoods can also make housing supportable for people of all ages. Final point. Coming back to the discussion about design here. It's what's outside of buildings that matters just as much as what's inside them. It's not just a matter of designing great units inside. It's the outside world that matters. Certainly we need to be creative and coming up like this to get kitchens for wheelchair users. Very cleverly designed to make everything at appropriate height for here. But we also need to create pocket parks for items in the neighborhoods, crosswalks and busy intersections. These are all things we need to design. Habitat for the wildlife, bus shelters for comfortable access to transit, outdoor fitness stations for older adults, senior centers where older adults can gather, and public art to make people smile. When you step out the door, it's nice sometimes to see oh my gosh, that's really cool. Anyhow, all of these things are part of what we factor in as we create great neighborhoods for people of all ages. It's not about just building things. It's about creating habitat for humans. We go about that as planners and people engaged in the planning process. We need to do it well, and we need to do it for people of all ages. Finally, we are writing our collective biography. I wasn't aware of this concept until I read this quote from Lewis Mumford. Each generation writes its own biography in the cities it creates. We need to write our biography creatively and responsibly. As current and future generations are counting on us. That was my paper.
Quick. Yeah.
Great, sure. Can you just preview for folks what we're dealing with this moment? Can you just preview for folks what we're dealing with this moment?
Yeah, one second, I'm finished and they know that.
We're trying to tell the technology that we're in charge.
Okay. Next up is a small group discussion where we will divide ourselves into a group of six or seven, and we have some prompts there. Would like each group to kind of discuss based on these prompts, and spend about 15 minutes since we have a group tighter time, and after that we will ask one person in the group to summarize basically what we discussed. So these are the prompts going to be up on the screen. I think if we just, go around the table, we have paper and pens to write the notes down here. So the first prompt is, I'm going to read it. How does Silicon Valley prioritize seniors today in terms of programs, support, services, community spaces, etc.? You think there are enough community spaces or not? One little discussion going around that topic. What is something challenging for seniors in current housing designs? Are there enough levels of senior housing in Silicon Valley to support upcoming seniors now? So these create, I would say, with the Fireside.
Why don't we take this slide in the back and we'll bring with the conference room?
Sure, that's fine. So you want to grab the paper and pen. Gather your pen here.
Yeah. We're supposed to swallow it.
Don, would you like to join it? Yeah. I used to be able to. But they're also right. Online test. Yeah, it's very yes. He's supposed to
Seems to, you know, everything's so different work, so. I thought we were not-
There's 37.
Yeah. It's lunchtime.
There are currently.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, something currently happening. There's money, so they're building houses. Sometimes floors, right? I don't know. Oh, or maybe some floors. We have them already. Which is happening already. Even for. There's no way we can do so that's really important. Yeah. Well, they have not taken every single. They do their own crap. Yeah. Individual level. Well, a lot of townhouses. Tall townhouses. On the second floor. Not, you know, but they're like. Things that can help you get someone downstairs. But maybe not all buildings have been thought of that.
So basically, we need to It's like what they do, they have nothing that slide, kind of slide.
I think about the isolation that. It's a giant parking lot. Yeah, I would think like that. I feel like animals. Specific. Yeah.
I think you want to think about it. Network. That's working with you. Building those guys. Now. National value. Already one. I don't know how that is. So one building.
Yeah. But even on that side, like how do we? Internet.
Well, the division where.
I mean,
How many just-
oh my God, I swam down there with my power. What I mean, that was- so when I was running,
FaceTime is so much easier. Yeah, Zoom.
And then Zoom is not satisfying it. People who are not sure that
yeah, but
And I'm good.
but like we don't have this, we don't like I don't get up for education or anything. All that community.
I think the point is the centers have to come close to the.
Right.
Rather than. Yeah. The steps and- The people about the person against the youth. Rush person. When putting yours, I see the people. They've been online for 3 hours in the beginning. So the thing is, I'm not staying 3 hours, but it was not that. So it's not my room.
That's television. Online. It's more like sisters there.
Whether it was done, so Italian or Portugal, you find buying things to do. People think that's time. It was in the thing.
So to get that either too, but like the Tuesday. Yeah. Two of the seniors.
Yeah. Another thing, how you design the side, I don't think it's many people have this idea. One for their. And, it's a way to know how to make Everybody. Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah. I think they're looked up. Yeah, it's not getting back. Steps that we do it like I guess, yeah, 1v5. I see. Are there enough levels of in your house? No. Give it a 1, 2, 3. Wow, we got 1 hour. The board is trying to have a grant and registering the house on it. And there's nobody can afford the rent, so it's not ready. That's some of the
What about all the empty houses? Yeah, all the empty. commercial space.
Yeah.
I think the time is up. Let's get back to the table. And, Mr. Guide, you also be careful when you're walking. Okay. You don't want any chippings. You don't want any big, so please be careful. Now, calling each. So we can have two groups present, come up and present, or we can take a mic there. And, so let's see. All the kids. I think Tracy is ready. I can see that.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tracy. I am a nurse and a healthcare quality professional in this interested. And also the daughter of two aging adults, of course, and their spouses. So, just reporting out from our wonderful group here, had a great discussion. At current state, we heard about that there are senior community centers around. We know that there are some transit programs that facilitate access bands to help folks go from home to their appointments. And that other ride services as for food access, we made Health Trust, Second Harvest Food Bank, and there are concrete lunch sites around. And we named them 37 of them around the county to assist with food access. In terms of challenges, some of the first things, of course, that came up is housing, most cost, availability, and also design. I think a really interesting point is thinking about how multi-level housing design can impact seniors and ability to go in and out, or even for emergency access in case of fire, for example. That many of our design is quite isolating, but have good spaces. I could say that applies for us youngsters as well, like I can get upstairs. But public transport availability, senior centers, we have them, but where they're located, and that much of our housing isn't necessarily designed for our current family structures. We built on nuclear families, but now we're of sandwich generations, so we have generations in a household and how to do that. In terms of number 3, I asked everyone to give us a score from 1 to 5 and how well we're doing with a resounding 1. One was the worst possible. The most wonderful thing for years. So myself, I think what's like the current state was hard for us to kind of come up with. So if we can't even recall that, then we aren't doing well.
Thank you, very much. One more group come up and present their company. Oh, sorry. Hi, I'm Sandhya. I'm a member of Catalyze SV, and I graduated high school recently. So, the first question, like, how does Silicon Valley prioritize housing right now? Can we senior housing? Like, we have ADA compliant sidewalks, which makes the sidewalks more wheelchair accessible and more accessible for disabled people. And we also have a senior agenda program as part of the Santa Clara County. And like the city and Silicon Valley have like websites for seniors to help find resources. And I don't know if we have enough, but like I live in Cupertino, and then we have like nice parks and areas like in public places for people to meet up. And also like I guess like where I live near Saratoga Creek, and then our trails are very wheelchair accessible and very accessible for everyone of all backgrounds, including people with dogs. And then
there's also community senior centers for people to get more resources and food distribution. And the second question, we thought that the senior housing design is very car dependent and it's very hard to access mobility. And then there's not a lot of like care facilities and healthcare facilities that are in close distance. And the transit is like not always reliable. Also, like we also felt like we need more community amenities within multifamily housing for people to interact more because it can feel like a really lonely sometimes when there is no community amenities. And then the streets like within like multifamily housing can be like really busy and there's no crosswalks with them. So it can be like a really dangerous place to live. And then not all like apartments or housing complexes are wheelchair accessible or not all of them have like reliable elevators for people to go between floors. And it's also like very expensive in these like senior living facilities. So that's what we thought for the second question. And then we also felt like, for the third question, that there's not enough senior housing in Silicon Valley to meet the needs of the silver tsunami.
Thank you. So now we move to the third item on the agenda, which is the panel discussion. Alex, to will be moderating it. I would like to invite Katie and Amanda, both, please come on in.
Oh, okay. All right.
Doctor?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, let's keep things rolling. Thank you for being here. And thank you, Sam and Katie, for being here as well. So you all have been designing and building housing for seniors, and we wanted to hear some of your insights. Don helped us get a sense of the neighborhoods, of the communities, and how Silicon Valley overall is changing as a place. And now we wanted to come down a little lower level to the individual lives of folks in their housing and hear from some folks who are building housing. So we wanted to ask you all a little bit about your experience designing and building senior housing. And our first question is, how has it changed, do you think, you all are too young to have worked 30 years in this profession, but over the many decades, or even in the short time you've been working, how have you seen the development and design of senior housing change? And how do you anticipate it changing in the years and decades ahead? And free flowing, whoever wants to go first.
I'll start. Let's go in order. The design and design and construction, I'll leave to the experts. I'm more on the financing side. And I think something that we've come to realize now, this has been covered by previous folks, but specifically in the affordable housing space, there's a realization that seniors are the fastest growing subset of the homeless population. Some of that might be, people who have been chronically unhoused and aged within the group, but a lot of people in this group have been unhoused for the first time as seniors. So as we develop senior housing, we're finding that we often are putting a significant set aside for people who are formerly unhoused, and those spaces are leasing up. At the same time, I think it's helpful to think about the market rate side. So we've heard that prices for assisted living, independent living, senior restricted housing are astronomical. And if you're an investor in market rate senior living, you're excited about it, right? It's a growing asset class. It's profitable, which means there's not nearly enough. So I think that the housing crisis that we're seeing is acute for senior people, and it has impacts on the rest of the population. So we remain really excited about doing senior projects, but unfortunately not getting any easier to finance. I'll hand that to Katie.
And if you know, let's just back up these chairs a little bit and maybe turn toward the center because some of the folks can't see you on the other side. If you don't mind. That's good.
I'd like to speak a bit to the kind of cultural dimension of design. You're right, my career's been 30 years. It more or less does track with the majority of career of Dave Baker, who the namesake of our firm was focused on multifamily design for pretty much his entire 4 decades of business. And is sort of credited in part with bringing a sense of the importance of like good design is something that everyone deserves to have access to. I think that is cultural. It's still something that we see evolving in other cities. I think apartment buildings is something and that's what I'm talking about in particular, the dense urban housing. Is something that we take for granted as being not great, right? It's our American dream to have that single family home. And so I think the answer to the question is really a slow shift of like starting to realize that we can actually design apartment buildings as wonderful, vibrant places to host communities. And then I think just now it's starting to shift even more and more of an awareness of like not just good design for individuals, but all people and what inclusive design actually means. And I think when you talk about whether it's seniors or children or neurodiverse or people with disabilities, as soon as you start thinking about anyone in particular, you start designing for everybody. I think that's honestly just starting now.
Hey, everybody. I want to speak a little bit to the changes we've seen in design. My career has not spanned 30 years in affordable housing, but I did speak to some of my colleagues about the trends that we've seen over the last few decades. So one shift has been in the size of the units. We used to build 1 bedrooms and some 2 bedrooms, predominantly for senior housing. We're seeing more and more studios and pressure to just fit more units into smaller pieces of land. And so we're definitely doing more studio units and then occasionally somewhat 1 bedrooms. Another, I would say, exciting change has been 30 years ago when we were building affordable senior housing. Aging in place was kind of a novel, exciting concept, and something that we were a bit on the cutting edge for, and now that's really normal. I mean, all of our units are designed to age in place. That's really our standard at this point. So that's been a shift that's been really positive for the industry. And then just building on what Lewis said, we have seen a lot more permanent supportive housing. So housing for people who are transitioning out of homelessness. We used to not really build PSH in senior housing, and now we really don't build projects that don't have PSH. Every project has typically 25% minimum PSH.
Every affordable house.
Correct, yes, we only build affordable, so every affordable project definitely is targeted to people that have, no income and are typically transitioning out of homelessness.
Anything I want to add? So community engagement is really important to Catalyze SV, and part of our work is allowing our members to weigh in on projects and give input. Can you talk a little bit about how you brought seniors into the conversation as you design and build projects or other aspects of your community engagement process, to your point, Katie, that are cutting edge and inclusive?
I would say that something that we are often considering is not just the voices of who lives in the community before we start a project, but also who is going to potentially move in. So we are always working with our advocacy partners to make sure that the design of our buildings is consistent with who we're trying to reach, and make sure that the way we do targeting, incomes and rents, is going to be leasable. So, for example, I did a deal that had a big set aside for veterans. We communicated extensively with the VA and the county to make sure that the units that were set aside for veterans were going to have incomes and bedroom sizes that were going to make sense and meet the needs. So we found that people actually were getting VA benefits, and it was important not to restrict them to the lowest possible incomes, but rather that some people who might get VA benefits might have a slightly higher low income, would still need a unit set aside for homelessness because of the tenuous housing situation. We also got feedback that. Let's go. We also got feedback that some people live in aids. So while most of our senior units are one bedrooms, we did make sure to have just a handful of units for people with living aids.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think actually, you could call it a kind of community engagement. An aspect of pre-design that we really get excited about is post-occupancy evaluation, talking to residents in existing buildings that are similar to the ones that we're about to design. We like to use this tool as a pre-designed tool. So it's almost like talking to proxies for who you're designing for. And we had a wonderful experience just in the last year, where we had a project in San Jose, design that was going to be predominantly formerly homeless seniors, and there was another project with almost the exact same demographic that we went and did a number of focus groups with them. This was a project specifically targeting issues around climate resilience and kind of innovative backup power solutions. So we learned a lot about their personal resilience and their relationship to safety, comfort, control, connections, things that are really important to all people. Again, like it's hard to pinpoint, these things are important for seniors, but it also like really taught me the great deal of personal resilience that these particular residents brought to their situation. So they weren't as concerned about themselves as they were about their neighbors or about the safety of the commons. So it's just a sort of an anecdote to say that there are these particulars about, the actual day-to-day experience of someone, especially someone who's older than 55, who has maybe some different concerns. That was really enlightening, especially in the area of kind of resilience and safety.
So currently I'm working on a early development project in San Jose that's going to be for queer seniors and their allies. And that was really born out of partnership with the county. They had a site that they identified for senior housing, and they felt like there was really a gap that we don't have housing that's specifically targeted to LGBTQ seniors who are disproportionately represented in the homeless senior community, and also like typically queer seniors tend to be more rent burdened than non-queer seniors, and so the county really targeted that. And that's long-standing partnerships that we've had with the county, having built for decades here. And so we do some of our community outreach really does come from what our partners are telling us they need and the gaps they're seeing and what's being offered.
How do you all think about designing for seniors that designs with an equity, accessibility, inclusion lens? Any lessons from your recent career on how to do senior housing that incorporates those elements? Maybe you talked a little bit about this.
I see. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of some specific examples. We have actually, not to sort of it's a shameless plug, but we have a book called 9 Ways to Make Housing for People. And again, it's sort of like you could think of it through a Jedi lens or not, but you know, it's these reminders of how to just
Jedi, could you say what that is?
sorry, justice, equity, diversity, inclusion. These are just reminders of how to make sure that what you're designing in an apartment building has a very kind of human dimension. And it's sort of obvious, like one of the ways is to be welcoming, like have a welcoming entry, and you don't have to sacrifice welcoming for safety and security. You're always faced with these tensions between isolation and independence, privacy and exposure, or connection and exposure, safety and welcoming or openness, right? But you can sort of have your cake and eat it too if you focus on it and don't design it too much of a reactive or fear-based stance or assumptions about what a community needs. So making connections, not just to within spaces in a building, so opening up sight lines, creating functionally supportive adjacencies among amenity spaces. I don't know how many apartment lobbies you've walked into, and it's just like a shoebox with a door to the stair and a mailbox, room around the corner. I mean, a lobby can be a wonderfully welcoming space with sight lines out to a garden, and it's not like that costs more. You just have to like imagine enough connections to the street as well. Mobility options that are more than just considering the parking count and the bike count, and you have your bike room. Where is this place? Who are the people living here? What are all the ways that they could be getting around? Do they need a charger for their, motorized chair, or, there's all sorts of modes of transportation. So just, I think it really just comes down to considering children and people who are aging when we design, and that becomes accommodating to change. I think when we design for seniors, we're designing for change, everybody.
Okay, just one last thing.
Yeah.
It's definitely a plug, but people might be interested. Could you say the name of the book again in case
Yeah.
people want to look it up?
Yeah, so I wish I brought a copy, but 9 Ways to Make Housing for People.
9 Ways to Make Housing.
Yeah, it's recommended. I wasn't one of the authors, so I can say that.
So one of the ways that we, I think, really broadly incorporate DEI into our work is that we try to design buildings, affordable buildings that are really indistinguishable from market rate. So making sure they're as good, if not better than market rate, to ensure that people anywhere on the income spectrum are living in really quality housing. Another way that Weden really focuses on DEI is we have a tagline that hope is just the beginning. But what that really boils down to is you don't just lease people into an affordable unit and then that's it. All of our housing is really service enhanced. So for each community, we do have a specific services coordinator who creates a plan that's really tailored to that community. And we meet people where they're at and get them the services they need. So, see a community that may really just helping people connect to the benefits that they're entitled to. It may be getting them access to different food resources, maybe helping them get a living aid. We really work directly one-on-one with our communities and then also kind of build a community site to ensure that people have what they need to succeed beyond just being stably housed.
And I would just add something that a point that we like to make is, while we love age-restricted senior housing, it's a terrific community to be able to tailor to. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, I live in a building full of millennials, and I can imagine in a few decades, I'll be thrilled to live in a building of seniors. But even our buildings have 3 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms for maybe people who are living with children. You still have seniors living in any building that you build. So really thinking about making sure that our communities are age inclusive, are really well adaptable for people of different mobility levels and needs. Something that we really like to do as an owner is make sure that every apartment we make is really easy to adapt for somebody whose mobility needs may change while we live there. So that all you need to do is go in and make minor configuration changes. Everybody lives in a unit that can keep up with their ability level over time. So really just using those universal design principles when we review them. It's something that we like to do for everyone.
Well, thank you three for sharing your nuggets of wisdom and for the work you do. Hopefully you can stick around for a little bit and mingle with the good folk here and be in some more small group discussions. And we're really grateful that you were here today. Thanks for sharing and thanks for the work. Yeah. I'm gonna turn it back over to our conductor for today's symphony on seniors. So, Colony.
And
Got it.
sorry, I do want
Yes.
to say, I regret I do have to leave to get to an office event, but it's not for lack of interest. So if you are interested in us or learning more, just, yeah, happy to be engaged.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Katie. So next is food. We have opened a dinner and we will have a small visually go the shop. I'll put the prompts up. I will be on grab the food, some water, do some networking, and next item will be on the screen.
being with us at Catalyze SV. Part of our mission is to envision and create. And so it's great that you are doing that with us today. So we've talked a little bit about, through Don's perspective, the city, the community, the neighborhood level. And with our architects and developers, we talked a little bit about housing and building individual buildings. Now we want to talk a little bit about physical spaces, spaces that serve seniors, that provide services for them. And we're very lucky to have a couple panelists here. Aya is how you say it? Couldn't be with us here today. She wasn't feeling well, but thankfully her colleague Janice is running point on the remarks. And we also have Rebecca Turner, who is very, very knowledgeable about this subject. So we're very grateful for the services that you provide to the community and to seniors and the insights you're going to share here with us today. And did everyone get food, I hope? It sounded like it was pretty good. So if you're on Zoom, you missed out. Don't forget in person, you get free food. We love to feed people at Catalyze SV. That's a big part of our culture, is bringing people together and sharing meals and breaking bread. And we know the power that that has in building communities. So I'm glad you all got to enjoy Saj. Okay, so Janice, Rebecca, thank you again for being here. We're excited to hear your nuggets of wisdom too. Let's talk a little bit about, first of all, how you've improved senior facilities. What are some of the challenges you've seen with senior facilities, and what have you done in your organizations or companies, or what are you planning to do to continue to address some of those challenges in the physical spaces of seniors?
Okay, I at least have a few minutes. So I'm a skilled nursing facility administrator, and I did that for 33 years. So when I talk about my perspective, it's going to be more about in the nursing facility, but a lot of this can be taken over as well to senior housing. So the biggest challenge in physical space and skilled nursing buildings is mostly they were built in the 70s. There's not a lot of new building going on. The rooms are small, they're not private. And you have these new great pieces of equipment, right? Bigger chairs, electric scooters, bariatric equipment for large residents, and there's just a lack of space. So I would say that that is the biggest challenge that we have. Oftentimes you get a large dining room, right? And that's very hard for a senior who can't hear, can't see, and you put them in a room this size for activities. It's not really the best setup for them. So I would suggest, you said about what to do. We would take people and do a lot of small group activities. We would stagger meals because put a lot of people in one room eating. Nobody can interact or visit. But if you do smaller groups, you can get more community building. And so we would do the same with the activities. Because and you still see it. You'll go into new buildings and there'll be a big, beautiful activity room. And so something to keep in mind.
Rebecca, can I ask a follow-up on that?
Mm-hmm.
So if the space is too big, is it auditorily hard to hear? Like the sound gets drowned out? And okay.
If you're hard of hearing, you usually need somebody to talk closer to you. If somebody is over there like Dawn presenting and I'm hard of hearing, I have an 86-year-old father, so it's been interesting to me that I was a provider for many years and now I'm on the caregiver side. It's very different being on that. But if my father was on an activity and Dawn was doing something, he wouldn't be able to track it. He wouldn't be able to hear. And then I also have this little, I like to bring props, but this prop talks about everybody's vision differences, cataracts, glaucoma, macular degeneration. I love this tool with the staff because it really gives them a sense of how different eye diseases will affect their vision. Okay, so if you have macular degeneration, you're also not going to see Dawn. And this is probably the size of a dining room from Dawn to me.
Wow. Can we pass that around if you would mind?
Sure. And just if you're building a place in today's world, you need a lot of electrical outlets. You've got hearing aids that need to be charged. You have scooters that need to be charged. You have iPhones, iPads. Then you have the family members who bring in the Echo. They decide they want to monitor something else. and we'll talk about AI in one of the other questions.
Hi, everyone. My name is Janice, and I am with Unlock Senior Services. We are a PACE program. Are you all familiar with what PACE is?
PACE, PACE.
Yes. It's an acronym for Program for All-Inclusive Care for the Elderly. And it was a model started here in San Francisco over 55 years ago. And I have two other coworkers here with me, Charlene Alabanti and Johara Arduz. We are a health plan. Our program, our PACE program is a health plan here in the Bay Area. We also are known as a nursing home without walls. We don't provide housing. People live in their own housing. But we provide healthcare. As I said, we're a health plan, so they get their medical services and socialization through our program. It is a federal and state funded program, so if people are Medicare and Medi-Cal eligible, there is no cost to the older adult to join our program. The state makes the determination whether the older adult meets eligibility for nursing home. And if the state approves, then they can enroll in the PACE program. We have partnered with Eden Housing, as you heard Samantha and Louis earlier. We did a project in Fremont where they built the housing and we built our PACE center. And that was the first statewide project that was connected housing and senior services. So we just do the services side. And we have these big buildings that are over 9,000 square feet that are divided into a clinic space, a rehab gym, and a socialization area. So based on people's care plan, they come to our center for either medical care, socialization because they need supervision of some sort, and or rehab for whether it's skilled therapy or a maintenance program. So as Rebecca said, one of the things, there's so many things to consider in buildings that house older adults, whether it's for socialization, medical care, because if you have high ceilings like this and you're in a small group, it is really hard for them to hear each other. So one of the outstanding features of our centers is when you come in and you notice people are there for socialization, it's always in really small groups because then they stay engaged with each other. They can hear, see, and touch each other, which is what a lot of older adults are missing. But again, our population are nursing home eligible. So most people have about 5 chronic diseases or more to make them eligible for our program. So we serve a niche population of older adults. And that definitely does present a challenge. One of the advantages we have, because it's a big center, as Rebecca stated, nursing homes years ago were built really small. Now, there are things like there are lifts for seniors. We have bariatric size wheelchairs that we need to accommodate. We provide showers in our center. So we need a turning radius for wheelchairs. And those are things a big center like ours can accommodate. But if we try and replicate that in a person's home, it's usually not possible based on the size of their home, unless they're willing to do renovation. Because think about if you bought your house, you are at the age of 30 or 40, and you continue to live there till you're 70 or 80, your physical needs change. So there has to be some renovation that probably has to happen to make it able to meet your needs. And many people can't afford the cost of these renovations. So I think those, as listening to Dawn, those are things that, you know, are always top of mind when we meet families that bring their older adults to our program. And they talk about the challenges they have with now mom's in a wheelchair, she can't really get around in her home, or we can't move her around very easily. So.
Our next question is around, no surprise, again, community engagement. And, you know, again, we provide input to developers through many of our members who score projects, and they are able to share what we would like to see in projects. You all have built and designed and operated facilities, whether it's a casual conversation with a resident or someone who visits your center and a client. How have you shaped or changed your spaces or your programs based on the conversations you've had with seniors? What have they told you that's changed anything that you've done in terms of your work or your operating?
Well, most of my experience has been with, the considering the vision, the hearing and mobility. And we would frequently talk to people that were here to listen if there was concerns by the residents and trying to navigate to make that a better working experience for them. As my father is aged, I've made accommodations in his home, as explained that they're very costly and you can't always do that. But I think that, biggest complaints are in the assisted living, and then one of my father's as well, is basic equipment like microwaves, dishwashers, all of that. They're all black on black now. And so if you don't, somebody who has a sight problem, they're not going to be able to operate any of those items. So we do a lot of labels everywhere in the nursing facility and at home.
We take care of a couple orders of religious sisters in Fremont, and we were able to work with their designer as they built out these cottages for to make it as accommodating as possible to keep the sisters as independent for as long as they could be. So it was building counters at wheelchair level. It was having items within the units, the individual units that were auditorily appropriate for their population. But the one caveat is that they were able to afford all the accommodations needed for elderly. They were able to build out their units, apartment units, so that there's sufficient wheelchair radius for them to be able to propel their wheelchair, get in and out of shower spaces, which most people don't have at home. So I think in our centers, what many of the older adults brought up is that we had signage that was too small of a font. They needed bigger font. So when we put monitors in our centers so they can either watch a show or some sort of programming, video meetings, we had to get the biggest screens possible so that people that sat in the back of the room could see it. And that made a ton of difference to many of the older adults, because as one participant told me, we don't have young eyes anymore. So if you're building that based on your experience, it's going to fail. And I think that speaks to what Don is saying in terms of when we're looking at current planning, future planning, we really need to look ahead and listen to people that are already there and to really pay attention to what their needs are. Tactily, like they said, they have diminished tactile abilities. So when you make touch screens, it's not easy for them to use. If you make buttons that are really small, like some of the microwave controls, I think buttons are really small, and it's hard to designate where they need to push. So I think all those things are just our information for us to do a better job with planning.
Sounds like you really listened to the folks that you serve and thought about innovations over time. Speaking of innovations, I've heard that there's a caregiver crisis in this industry that you've been working in, and we meanwhile have things, as Rebecca, you were alluding to, AI. This is the hot topic in this valley. Are there innovations in technology or other innovations in the work that you do that can help you address the caregiver crisis while providing the continued and maybe even improved services to the senior community that you serve?
So AI is going to offer a lot of opportunity, especially in skilled nursing. And what we're hoping is that it actually takes away or gives back time to the nurses that have one-on-one time with the residents. Because a lot, especially in skilled nursing, there's so much documentation and so many regulations. The other opportunity is I was working with a company and they had a wearable, and it would measure what the resident did continuously. And the goal was that if we started to notice that that resident wasn't getting the food to their mouth, that they were slowing down with their eating, we could intervene. And so that's where it's really going to help for caregivers, right? We'll better know what their bowel and bladder patterns are. We'll know where they eat. We'll know how they're moving around in bed, and at 2 a.m. they get antsy and we need to go in there because we don't want them to fall. A lot of the wearables, a lot of all that senior tech stuff is after the fact. It tells you when they fell, at what time, and where they were. But there's stuff that happens that we can use to intervene sooner. So I think that that's a wonderful opportunity for skilled nursing. But the issue is that it's not necessarily affordable. Skilled nursing is funded based on Medicare and Medi-Cal and very little private. And so that's going to be the challenge, is that getting the senior tech, people that are coming up with these great technologies to realize that nursing facilities, we don't run on the highest Microsoft program. I don't even know what it is now. It's 10 or something. They're telling me we have this great product on 10, and I'm like, I think we're still like on 7 or something. And so understanding that and understanding that our staff don't have, the capacity, or it's going to be a big learning curve to get them up to speed on how to use the iPad and the different, whatever the system is, right? Downloading, uploading.
We have been approached by the Alexa product. They wanted Unlock to test out. Does this gadget work with your older adult? Our issue is we have over 57% of our population have some stage of dementia. So we do not work with people that are cognitively intact. So there's, within the older adult population, there's all these niche populations, right? There's people with all these different chronic diseases that have different challenges, present different challenges to our organization. There's a set of people with Parkinson's, people that have MS, large number that have dementia. So as the longer we live, the more we are faced with people that have these chronic diseases that show up in ways that really limit their ability to live in the communities we've designed. Trying to get a Parkinson's participant to walk to the grocery store, no matter how small the area is a challenge. So I think, you know, to add to your presentation, Don, is that there are niche populations in that older adult that we really need to be smart about. If we want people to be able to live in these designed communities, we need a lot of different people at the table, because I can only speak for what it is to be an able adult. I don't know, I've never had the experience of any kind of physical limitation. And so I can talk about it from an observer position, but it would be worth $1 million to have people at the table that can speak to what the needs are. And I think we do need to do a better job of listening and paying attention, because we give our ear to people that speak loudest, that have the most money, and we miss a portion of the population that are underserved.
Well, yes, if it makes you feel any better, that issue happens in all development and building in our communities. It's part of why Catalyze SV was formed, to bring other voices to the table that have traditionally been unheard. I wonder if we have time, Shalini, to ask if anyone in the audience has questions or wants to ask anything of the panelists, or maybe make, I'm gonna say this caveat and disclaimer, I hope it will stay true. A quick comment would be appreciated. So if anyone wants to ask a question or comment, if you can go, Deb, and then Neil, and then Chris.
Thank you, Janice, to telling that there are different people with different disabilities and we need to design for that. So, for dementia, I suppose, how many people would be like for dementia? Is it an appreciable long-term number? So, because dementia was, there are some sensors that we are using in our solution.
So we serve about 1,800. Unlock serves about 1,800 older adults in the Bay Area. That's a really small population of older adults. About 57% of our participants have some degree of dementia. So many of them live with family and or a sort of a protected living situation. We do have some older adults with dementia that have no support and continue to live independently, but you know, they're the ones that at some point will have a major crisis. And how do we support them in our community? So we try to put a care plan in place to take care of every one of our older adults. And it is challenging when you get down to all the different diagnoses, the different levels of care everyone needs. It presents a challenge to our care teams.
Anything done?
Oh, I think our numbers were about the same. I think this has surprised, but it was about 50% out of 60 residents, you know, with dementias. But it's like Janice described, it's different levels. You know, not everybody is a wanderer and try to leave the building. Sometimes it's just they forget where they are and need to be redirected back to their room.
Say 57%, that means about 1,000 people total. Some cost for
Yeah, 9.
That is appreciable number.
And I think those are the families that are seeking care, right? So it's a small part of the population.
And that's probably who they know, because a lot of times people don't even know their family member has dementia until the family member from out of state comes and stays with them for the weekend. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, mom does this and she puts this under the bed and she did this. And then you're like, oh boy, nobody even knew she was doing all that. Am I right?
Question for you, so many of your clients are living alone at home or don't always have caregivers. How do you deal with seniors who are fall prone or fall risk? And I heard dependents don't all work because they don't like it around their necks when they go to bed or take a shower. Or when they fall, they have to fall like a tree for it to be identified. What happens if they fall and they're on the ground unattended for a long time?
That definitely is a challenge for our care teams. We have many older adults are at fall risk anyway. Balance changes, their physical abilities, uneven surfaces are not as negotiable as when you're more physically able. We have fall mats in place. We have bed alarms that is loud enough so that as the participant themselves are falling and they fall onto a mat, they may not, it doesn't necessarily trigger an alarm outside of where they live, but inside their home, if they have somebody else that lives there that can answer the call or the buzzer. The pendants will work for people that know how to use it, right?
Dementia.
Yeah, they don't. So many times when they get to that level within our program, we advise that they live in a residential care facility for elderly and or seek family assistance whenever possible. But it doesn't always work. There are so many older adults out there that don't have that support. So we don't have an answer. We don't have like a great answer for that. We have to design a program for each individual. We have caregivers that are in our participants' home from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. for short periods of time. But if somebody does require 24-hour supervision, we really recommend that they move to a different setting. And because we're not a housing program, that we have to turn it over to someone else to be able to house them. But in this day and age, it's tough to find caregivers, physicians, nurses. So really, it's a challenging time right now. And whether COVID kind of sparked all of this, I think, people that were in different industries, we thought, do they want to continue doing this? So we've been really challenged with being able to access physicians and especially nurses. So caregivers really are a challenge also. And I think, looking over the history of caregivers, it is no longer a field that many people are looking to make a career out of. So again, just like housing, we're having to look at what happens if there are no caregivers, because almost all of our services provided are provided by our caregivers.
I'd like to say something about falls because it's the second cause of death, I believe, among the elderly. And I think that when you, and I had to struggle with my father, and then I saw the other side, because what we would see the nurses do is they say, sit down. Sit down, be safe, don't move. Then what do you have? You have atrophy, and muscles, they stand up and then they fall. And so we tried to say, if the residents keeps trying to get up, go ahead and walk them. And I've been trying to implement this at home with my very high fall risk father. And I think what I would love to see being built is fall safe homes. Okay. I'm not going to keep my dad from walking. I don't want to keep him from walking. He's going out in the garden. And my stepmother's saying, don't go out in the garden. Don't go out in the garden. I'm like, you know what? Go, Dad. Just take your walker, because if he's going to injure himself, that's where I want him to injure himself. But inside, I keep thinking like, oh, I should add this, I should, I should get rid of that. Not, we all do the throw rugs, we all get rid of those. But I'm talking about the corner that he's gonna fall and hit, the hole in the yard that he's gonna step on or something like that. But wouldn't that be wonderful if we could ambulate safely? And yeah, you might you might have a bad outcome, but your quality of life, because you weren't being told, sit in the chair, be safe.
Can you tell me what ambulate means?
Oh, I'm sorry, walk,
Walk. Oh, okay, sorry.
thank you,
I should know that. Let's go, Chris, and then some.
walking.
Yeah, so, kind of expanding on the point that was just touched on, one thing that, my mother's particularly interested in, being one of the primary caregivers of my grandmother, is, the whole aging in place thing, and, how to make that doable as much as possible with, aging adult that's becoming, increasingly dependent on support.
Thanks, Chris. Any comments on that to follow?
Okay, it's supposed to be about building, but I think the biggest challenge for aging in place is payment source, right? They run out of money and they can't afford the home care anymore. And the only place that Medi-Cal pays for is skilled nursing, unless you're in a PACE program. And so you're starting to see a lot of assisted living level residents going into skilled nursing simply because they don't have the funds.
Is there any accommodations that are needed for like service animals? And like how useful are they in treating like senior citizens?
Service animals, good one.
Personally, I think service animals meet different needs of older adults. I mean, for anybody, they're companions, somebody that they have a relationship with. So depending on that particular adult, if it's companionship or socialization, service animals can really be helpful for them. People that have visually impaired, service animals really are sort of an extension, another tool that can be utilized. We have 2 participants that are completely blind that have service dogs. And also one has a seeing eye dog, which is sort of unusual to have 2, but it's, I believe, a very useful tool to that population.
There's a program called Furry Friends that people take their animals into nursing facilities and they go all around to all the different ones. It's a great program.
I haven't taught myself. So.
Let's go to Catherine and then last question, Sonia.
No.
Scoot around like
You might have to ambulate.
Yeah. I really, good thing I don't know what that is.
Yeah, so Rebecca, earlier you were mentioning the homes of people who are hard of hearing, and one thing I was wondering if you work with the acoustics in the spaces so that there's like less echoes or background noise. I know, like at my apartment building, nobody can hear each other talking in the community room because there's so many hard surfaces. All you can hear is the echoes of your voice and anybody else in the space who's talking. But the Palo Alto Junior Museum Zoo did such a fabulous job of sound deadening that you can have a room full of excited kids playing with exhibits and still talk with somebody at a normal conversation volume, normal conversation distance.
So in 2000, the facility I was at built an assisted living and did a new dining room, and the acoustics were terrible, and everybody complained. And they ended up putting up the soft boarding, which didn't help. I think it goes back to what Janice said, though. After a building's built, our staff walked through and said, well, why did they do that? Why are those seats are black and the carpet's black, residents can't even see. They weren't black, I'm just using that as an example. And so I think Janice is so right about, you have to have everybody at the table. We talk to the staff that are gonna work there, we talk to the residents that are gonna live there. You maybe do some of that reality work stuff, which is a program where you, well, back in the day, we just put Vaseline on our glasses and we tied on our hands so that we could teach empathy to our staff about what's happening with the residents. Now there are all these high-tech programs. And even following around the senior, like I had no idea that the concrete, you probably know this because you guys go out more, but the concrete on walkers, a lot of the concrete, I mean, the yellow bumps have a good purpose, but they're terrible for walkers. But the concrete and out in front of Kaiser buildings, it's all these little balls and it's, so get everybody involved.
Oh my God, that was so beautiful. My mom.
Jess, did you want? Thank you both so much for the contributions. I can't believe how much I've learned listening to you and our other speakers today on subjects I don't know enough about. So it's truly enlightening to hear your wisdom. And again, thank you for the work you do serving our senior community. I'm going to turn it over to Shawnee. Before I do, she's pointing me to point to you, our post-event survey. Give us feedback on how you think we did today. We would love to get your input. Designing for Seniors is a part of a new series we launched called Designing For, and it's our second year. Last year we did Designing for Women. Next year, be interested in your feedback on who we should focus on, which community. Is it foster youth? Is it LGBTQ folks? Some that made me think about designing for pets. I don't know, but whatever your thoughts are, we want to hear them because we'll be planning a Designing For next year to continue to focus on underrepresented communities in Silicon Valley that need places and spaces that prioritize them and make our community a better place. So please take the post-event survey. Shawnee has a couple remarks to wrap us up tonight. Different cultures.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And we would like to thank again all the panelists, speakers, Donna. Thank you. I hope all of you enjoyed and learned something.
Do we have some other slides?
No,
Oh,
I
that's
think
it.
this is the most important slide. Yes, there was thank you, which I didn't say. I will show the slide. Oops. No, go back. And so it's just, yeah, let's see if everybody is done and we can go to the slide. Yeah, please take a picture of this, fill the survey. And please give us suggestions on what other events you would like to see, Catalyze SV. Now we have Jade, she just joined as Deputy Engagement Manager in between more educational events. And we will look for all the ideas. Do that. Yeah, this is one of the events we do every year. This is the third year we'll be doing, and the date is going to be set November 14th at Climate Change Awards. That's what we have. Oh, yeah. Our website, catalyzeSV.org, where you can go and check out the events happening. We do once a month fact meetings where Jake organizes them with new projects coming up in the Valley area, and we score them. Okay. Try and see what happens. There might be senior community coming up, and we can give all the learning what you have today. Okay. And we have a CP where it's about community engagement and ambassadors and leaders who try to join. Karma here is part of the team. And
That's right.
So we have very wide, diverse groups, and I just graduated from high school. So
Nice, congratulations.
And yeah, any suggestions, please feel free to email us info@catalyze.org.
Thank you.
Just one last thing. I would be a very bad nonprofit leader if I didn't ask if anyone wants to donate tonight. So, this work is sponsored again by Kaiser Permanente, Unlock. Thank you for helping put on the event, helping feed us and make today possible. Thank you, A New Vista, an organization closely connected to Shalini, for your support as well. When you donate, you can get apparel. So the reason I'm dressed so silly today is because I wanted to show off the Catalyze SV apparel. We have design that's not just Catalyze SV, we also have designs featuring Jake Scott, Bank of Italy, right? We've got one with Allen Rock Park, Mount Hamilton. So Silicon Valley, iconic places that mean a lot. We have a t-shirt, hoodie, and long sleeve shirt design. So if you donate a small amount of money, I think it's $60, $70, $80, going up from t-shirts to long sleeves to hoodies, you can get free apparel that you will pick out your chosen apparel. So that's a great way to support the organization, to celebrate Silicon Valley and this community. And so please help get involved with our organization, support us so we can continue to put on events like this and others. And Jake will be also planning some more housing tours this year. So if you want to come see some of the buildings that are being built in the community, some of which we may have advocated for, come join one of our housing tours. So we'll add all of you to our email list so we can stay in touch on some of these events. And, if you could put the thank you slide up again, because I want to thank Shalini so much as well for helping put on it. So, thank you.
For the designer, or I think another thing.
Nice. Good. That's great.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Just for the last.